Welcome back to The Real Story with Jeannie Ives. It is always going to be one of the best podcasts of the month or even the year when you have Ted Dabrowski sitting across the table from you and having a really good discussion about Illinois, how it compares to other states, and all sorts of other interesting things. So welcome back to the program, Ted Dabrowski. He is the president of wirepoints.org. I know that I have told my audience a number of times you need to sign up for WirePoint's daily emails. It's a compilation of a number of different articles that deal with Illinois and the nation actually. And Ted, I'm very curious. You guys have started with a new person on your team, Matt Rosenberg. He has done some incredible work dealing with crime statistics, and everything surrounding that. So tell me about bringing Matt on to the team.
Yeah, you know, we've covered all the fiscal issues, education issues, out-migration issues, but at WirePoints, we weren't covering crime. And, you know, that was always a painful thing not to cover such a big issue. But as it got bigger and bigger, you know, we couldn't ignore it anymore, because you can't have a functioning state. You certainly can't have a functioning Chicago with that level of crime. And as we saw the policies fall apart, the leadership fall apart, I happened to run into Matt when he was doing his book. He came out and he interviewed me for part of his book, and I have a little small section in there. But I enjoyed talking to him. I liked that there was somebody who cared so much, that was willing to get deep into it. He's got a good storytelling thing going. I wanted to marry that with the data that we do. And at WirePoints, we didn't have enough data on that. So what we're doing is, I think, doing a good job of bringing all that together, bringing the data with the storytelling, and trying to, you know, eventually work on a good solution set.
Yep. One of the best things that you guys he just recently put out was the data about police response in Chicago to, you know, level 1 and 2 crimes that are being committed. And it's alarming. It's something on the order of 52% of the calls, over 400,000 calls went unresponded to, and they're level 1 and 2 calls, which means that there's a felony in process. There's, aggravated assault is going to occur. There's a threat of bodily harm is going to happen, and yet, nobody knew this. Nobody knew this until Matt put it together, and then you guys put it out in your information. What has been the response on that story alone? I think that should be waking a lot of people up.
Yeah, you know, it's fascinating. There's been a huge interest in it for sure. 400,000 calls when the police dispatcher saying, "Hey, we need somebody to go to a stabbing or to a, some kind of attack in progress." Nobody there. 400,000, and so, you know, we're looking at the data, and there are these things called RAPs, radio assignments pending, and these are periods where there's no police available to respond. And that was being tracked, how many of those periods there are. But we said, well, yeah, but how many actual incidents within those periods are there? And so when we FOIA'd for the data, 400,000 such incidents. And it's scary because, you know, when you think about, okay, you got 800 murders in Chicago, you got all these different things, but tack on 400,000 incidents where you're talking about stabbings or whatever, no police to respond. Are you kidding me? And so then you have to think about what does it mean? And the issue is that, you know, when you have a city leadership that just beats up on the police for so long, when you have this defund the police thing, when you have this anti-policing environment, what do you expect the police to do? First of all, there's fewer policemen, and the morale is nowhere near where it should be.
Well, sure, they arrest people, and then Fox simply lets them out as well. So that's part of the story, too.
Right. I mean, it's like, you got to think about it. You're a policeman, maybe you're close to retirement. Are you really going to get out of your car to take on some person where you run the risk of, quote, doing something wrong, or two, you run the risk of your life, and that person's going to be back out on the street tomorrow or the day after? You know, it's a lot to think about for a policeman.
So was there any response? I mean, I didn't see that this type of level of information on crime and police interactions. I didn't see this in Chicago Tribune. I didn't see this in the Sun Times. I didn't see it in any of the major media. Did anybody respond?
No, they didn't pick it up. You know, what's interesting is we haven't seen this kind of stuff covered nationally. If somebody's done it, we haven't seen it. I think this is huge news, but right now the mainstream media is not going to pick it up, and I don't know why. Maybe because they didn't get it. I don't know, but you know, you would think Sun Times would grab this.
Well, so the best thing about WirePoints really is that you do cover a lot of different public policy issues. So you're not just, one particular thing. Like, back when we were working together on some state legislative stuff. It was all financial. It was, pension reform. It was some education reform. But really, WirePoints is growing into a incredible organization where you're covering a lot of public policy issues. One of the things that I love, because you can't find it anywhere else, is you still are covering the COVID statistics. And so what I have been doing is checking every single week when the COVID statistics are kind of updated. And I've been checking for the breakthrough deaths, because I think what a lot of people don't understand is that now you can go back, I think, in the latest rendition, and I'm looking at 10-week spans. 9 out of 10 weeks, the breakthrough deaths are the majority of deaths.
That's right.
When it comes to COVID. And breakthrough deaths, again, is somebody who's fully vaccinated, boosted, everything is done. That's considered a breakthrough death. And they are the majority of deaths in COVID. What is going on?
Well, okay, so part of it, to be fair, is, there's majority of people who are, let's say, over 60 are vaccinated.
Okay, right.
So now what's happened is, but it's confusing, because you would think that if you're vaccinated, boosted, well, you're okay. Well, you're right. Sometimes it's like 60-70% of deaths in a week are people who are vaccinated. It just kind of tells you that, yeah, vaccines protect you, but it's not everything, right? And so we never got that story from Pritzker and team.
But I imagine a lot of people do. I don't know if you guys track your traffic, but I imagine a lot of people do go to your site to find the latest COVID statistics, because it's all right there. ICU bed use, everything.
It's been our biggest page over the last 2 years. And what's amazing is we got into this, and again, we're covering finances. And
right.
At the beginning, I didn't want to cover COVID, because I said we're not doctors, we're not specialists.
But somebody had to collect the data.
But when there was never any truth telling, when they wouldn't put like hospitalizations and deaths, and they kept talking about cases, we finally said, well, let's just grab the data and let's make sure we package it in a way that tells the truth about the data, right? We weren't going to run our own numbers, because we don't have our own numbers, but we showed what the government wouldn't show. And, even things like comorbidities, we went into the Cook County Examiner, medical examiner's database and just got it and put it out, because they didn't. And so,
right, it's their data. We're presenting it to you
right.
in one place where you can look at it every single day if you want to, and not have to depend on multiple government websites, because the government's not doing this.
No, and you
they're hiding it, and you're just pulling
it was just in a database. You're pulling it out. Now, it's interesting, because we still have it up.
Yes.
Some people are saying, take it down. COVID's over. Take it down. And we're saying, well, in a way, we're still promoting COVID, as being alive. But at the same time, if we took it down, then you're only left with what the government says. So we're still keeping it up.
But one person who can't get let go of COVID is Governor Pritzker.
Right.
Right. So he just issued his 31st consecutive disaster declaration, emergency order, whatever you want to call it, about COVID. And his next 30-day emergency order was declared on June 24th, 2022. You wrote a really good article about it and went back to it. I love this. Just to critique your work, one thing that I did, because, and maybe we should have been added in, is to remind people, because it's always important to remind people of what he said in 2020 about COVID and these disaster declarations. Because back then, one point that you make in this article is that he declared it still COVID disaster for the entire state, right? The entire state is a disaster area.
Every county.
Every single county. But when this all started, he had 11 regions that were going to be independently assessed as to whether or not they had a particular COVID level. But now that's completely scrapped. No, the entire state's one huge disaster.
You're making a huge point. I forgot about that.
Yes.
Because he started with counties,
yes.
And then everybody complained because you had some counties that have 5,000 people who weren't being touched, and so he did the 11 regions, and now the 11 regions seem to have disappeared. I'm glad you reminded me.
And then he also had 5 phases to quote unquote restore Illinois, which, by the way, he stole Darren Bailey and the Eastern Bloc's moniker of restoring Illinois. But that's a side point. But he had his 5 phases of restoring Illinois, and 5 phase we were going to be completely back to normal in phase 5, and that only required a a vaccine or a highly effective treatment.
That's right.
Or no more cases. Well, we now know that we've been through variation after variation after variation of COVID. It's just going to continue to be sort of endemic. It's going to be there almost like a flu virus that you're going to find occasionally, right? But we have multiple vaccines. We have multiple highly effective treatments. And we're declaring Illinois, the entire state, a disaster for 31 months now.
Yeah. I tell you, Jeannie, what really ticks me off about this is the whatever you want to call it, the dishonesty part.
Yes.
And it's important to point out that he's calling it a disaster proclamation because, you know, an executive order or whatever, it sounds like he's the chief, so he can issue some orders. This is a disaster proclamation, and it says, Governor Pritzker, find that disaster exists within the state of Illinois and specifically declare all counties in the state of Illinois a disaster area. Now that's, we did a reel of it. We showed he declared that on the 24th of June. Well, if you look at the baseball stadiums in July, they're packed with 100,000 people, whatever the number is.
Zach Brown concert, everybody went to that.
And you've got people in the bars, and then we took a picture of the beaches. There's no disaster. So what I want people to understand who don't follow this, he's doing this because with that declaration, he preserves the right in August, September, to potentially, if he needs to, close schools, close businesses, mask kids, force vaccinations. With that proclamation, it's an emergency in Illinois. He retains that power. And I think that is absurd, and it's so wrong. And it's really sad that no other Democrat leadership will call him out on it. None of the media calls him out on it. It's a free pass for him, and he continues to retain power.
Well, it's also a little bit hypocritical. CapFacts, which is sort of a blog site that's an insider's view to what's going on in Springfield, they just said that there's something new on this development. And that as part of his continuing plan to carefully unwind the state's COVID-19 executive orders. This just came out today, by the way. Governor Pritzker today was updating vaccine and testing requirements in some industries. The updated executive order amends testing requirements for some unvaccinated healthcare employees and removes mandates for some other industries. Among the provisions that have been lifted in the past months, Governor Pritzker has reduced requirements for school exclusion, removed provisions relating to setting up alternative care facilities, returned to non-emergency hospital overnight by removing several provisions, and restarted normal jail-to-prison transfers. Other changes included lifting provisions in an effort to ensure governments are resuming normal operations. So does this make sense in light of his disaster declaration? He's sending out two different messages because maybe he's feeling the heat, or maybe he knows what he's putting out is actually a lie.
Right. I mean, God knows what's happening there, but you can't have a disaster declaration when you have the freedom that we're having today and what's happening out there and people traveling all over the world now. So it makes no sense.
No, you're right. It doesn't. Totally. So, this guy's just speaking on both sides of a mouth.
Just check out our Instagram reel because it kind of tells, this, we did a fun Instagram reel on it.
Okay,
and,
great.
It just captures the essence of how false
Good.
it is.
Maybe what we can do is, JP, maybe you can insert that at some point during this thing. That'd be great. Okay. Well, I mean, it's just remarkable. So let's move on though. So here we are. Illinois is still a disaster, and actually, you and I would agree, it is a financial disaster.
Yes, it's a different kind of disaster.
That is a different type of a disaster. One that's also, man-made. Let's be honest about that. But so now you've got Pritzker trying to tell us that Illinois is just doing great, right? It's just doing great. But then your buddy Mark Lennon, the founder of WirePoints, says that the new state of Illinois financial statements show a $4.5 billion loss for FY 2021, repudiating the balanced budget claims. Well, of course, we haven't had a balanced budget since 2001. But so what's going on? We are still drowning in red ink. Isn't that the truth?
No, that's the truth. I mean, the only thing that's happened that's taken all the pressure off of Illinois has been the $186 billion in COVID aid that our public and private sectors have gotten over the last 2.5 years. It's massive. It's spilling money into coffers of states, not just in Illinois, but everywhere. And that's been kind of covering all the cracks, all the massive cracks we have in Illinois. But to Mark's point, when he tracked the actual, quote, net worth of Illinois, well, guess what? It's down. It's negative. We lost money. And again, it's because we don't tell the truth in our financials. It's a $4.5 billion loss, and it all has to do with worsening pensions, and we don't tell the truth in our budgets. We say it's balanced, but it's never balanced, and it always things get worse, and the debts get bigger for the Illinoisans to pay.
Well, one other thing about that, though, is additionally there's a lot of lies being perpetrated here too, because one of them is that we're fiscally healthy, and that's not true. So we're one of a number of states who has not paid back completely its unemployment insurance. And so what's going to happen in the future, and I think I picked up this article from your posting that you guys put out every day, and essentially our employers now are going to successively pay more and more per person back to the unemployment fund, because the Democrats spent the COVID relief money on other projects, other things, instead of paying back the federal government. So it's us, California, Illinois, New York.
There's a few states.
Yeah, a few states, not everybody, who refused to pay back borrowed unemployment funds from the federal government. Now our employers are going to pay back.
Well, yeah, most of them used the federal aid to pay back the federal government. So most of them did that. Illinois was one that didn't. We owed, but this is a month and a half, 2 months ago, we owed $4.5 billion back to the federal government just to make our account whole at zero. Then we still needed another couple billion just to have money in the account. So we're talking about a $6 billion shortfall. And rather than take all that federal aid that came in and pay it back, well, we didn't. We spent it on other things, as you mentioned, other goodies. And now it's going to be on our employers, and eventually they have to get that from people.
That's
so
right.
It's just another hit.
The cost of business just went up in the state of Illinois because because now the federal government has come in and said, here's your schedule for paying back these funds, and I think it goes up to about $63 per person in year 3 just to get it back. That's per employer. So if you've got 1,000 employees, $63,000 more.
You're gonna have to figure out where to get that money.
Figure out where to get it.
Exactly. Whether it's going to come out of people.
That's right.
Illinoisans. Yep. Just one more cost.
And then they're looking at least a 3-year payback on that, so it's going to continue. But in the meantime, we always have to do the comparison because it's important too. We're little laboratories of democracy here, and so how is it? Just explain this to me. I was shocked and alarmed when I saw this headline. Florida has a $21.8 billion budget surplus. $21.8 billion budget surplus?
Just money's coming out.
At the same time, when you look at 2017, I think it was the latest status, when you compare Florida to New York has double the size of the budget of Florida, but Florida has at least 1 million more people.
Yeah. Well,
so these blue states, red states, there's something to it.
You keep looking at the data across the board. California's got some exceptions from time to time, and California's California. But you look and see Florida just gaining people, right? They're winning people right and left. We just did the 2020 movement of people between states, and Florida was the huge winner. They gained so many people, 166,000 in that year, net. And the amount of AGI, the amount of taxable money that comes in, was some $26 billion. And on the other end of it is Illinois losing, that kind of people and losing its tax base. And then of course you throw on things like Citadel, and you throw on Boeing, et cetera, Caterpillar. It's bad, but Florida is just winning big. It's people in Texas too. They're winning people, they're winning companies, and they're spitting out money. And that's what happens when you do well. You attract people, you get economy growing. We've got the opposite.
Yep, we do. One other thing that I want to touch on, because, again, you guys do so much great work. You did a very important report on education and education outcomes in the state. You put that out in June, and, it's pretty alarming to find out that, for example, in Elgin, only 11% of Hispanic students perform at grade level. So how is that report? Maybe you want to go through just some of the finer points. You focused on Decatur, which is interesting to focus in on there, and you looked at particularly minority performance. That they're not doing well at all. I think 2% read at grade level.
Yeah, for third graders.
1% maybe perform at grade level in math. It's really sad. It's a sad situation. So what has it upset the education establishment here? Did ISB reach out to you and say, wow, that's great? Tell us some more.
I do think, in having worked on a lot of stuff here in Illinois over the last, 12, 13 years, that's been one of my favorite reports to work on. And it's sad, but I can't, I can't imagine finding what we found and nobody caring. But it's exactly what's happening. So we had reported on Chicago having an 84% graduation rate. Lightfoot was, praising it. We have a record graduation. Sure. But when you looked at the reading ability for 11th graders, it was 26%, and that got national news. And well, then we started to look at Decatur just because we had a radio interview down there, and it's like 2% reading for third graders, for black third graders. 2% were reading at grade level, and we said that's a mistake. It's got to be wrong. 1% for math. And then you look at the whites. What's my number? I can't even think of the number now. Whatever it is, 15%.
16% Decatur white students.
Yeah, 16% for white third graders. So it's not just, it's not a minority thing. It is, they've got their equity that they wanted. Mm-hmm. Horrible results, but they're equal, right?
Right.
It's the wrong way. Rather than lifting everybody up, we got everybody down. And so, so we looked at Rockford, we looked at Elgin, we looked at Mount Vernon. I mean, you're talking about 0% in Mount Vernon of third grade black kids.
0% in Mount Vernon.
What is going on? So then we said, well, wait, okay, let's look at teacher evaluations. The teacher evaluations, or let's look at the school evaluations. They must be low. No way. You're talking about teacher evaluations across the board, across the state, that are anywhere from 97 to 99 to 100%, either excellent or proficient. So teachers are great. The schools, many of these failing schools, are commendable by ISB. So, that's good. Everything's still good.
Yep.
Kids are getting moved through. They're automatically promoted from grade to grade to grade. Who cares if they can read? Nobody does. They're getting promoted. Graduation rates, 80%, 85%. Okay, let's just move them through the system. Then you look at pay. You start looking at all these superintendents, multimillionaire pensions. It's a system that is so corrupt, so broke.
Such a scam.
It is the the industrial complex all the way, and there's no way to change it. And that's really the conclusion of the report. There's so much money, so many people in power benefiting from a system. Nobody wants to break it up because there's too many people that got their hands in it. And the only thing you can come to conclusion on is we need choice, school choice. Absolutely. Because there's no other way around it.
I 100% agree. I've been following this issue. When I've been following you and your work on education since I first knew you, and it is really your best work, honestly, because it's so meaningful. And yet, no response from legislators. A few, couple.
I hate this whole racist stuff. All this racism,
right.
and I don't really I don't want to play the whole race card.
Right.
But you can't design. If you look at Decatur, and if they're just promoting kids through, and even when they get to be seniors, I don't know what the numbers are now, 10% or 7% can read at grade level, and then they graduate them. You can't design a more racist system than that.
Did the Decatur superintendent reach out to you?
No. Now, the good news was...
How about the school board?
No, heck no. No. The only thing we did is we reached the school. When we first read those results, I called the school to verify if it was true, and we drove down there because I didn't want to write on something that I didn't understand how bad it could be. Right. But they did meet us, and the person there who runs the curriculum did try to explain why things were so bad.
And?
Just same old, right? We don't have a curriculum. Our board keeps changing. There's just all excuses.
It's not for lack of money.
No, there's plenty of money. That was the other thing I didn't mention.
It's not for lack, right?
We spend a lot of money in Illinois.
Yes, we do. Like $40 billion practically on education.
Here's the amazing stat, right? So in Florida, they spend less than $10,000 a student. In Illinois, we spend more than $16,000. So you're talking about $6,000 difference per student. And they do either as well or better than we do in Illinois. And they have tons of minorities, more minorities than we do, and they have the same low income as we do. So what's wrong, right? Why do we spend so much? What is this system that we have that spends that much money and can't compete with Florida?
Well, at Breakthrough Ideas, we've been really adamant about getting people to the school boards and actually focusing in on a lot of these metrics. We've taken on the other issues too, from comprehensive sex ed that is coming down the pike.
Yeah.
They, ISB is still hiding what they're going to mandate in terms of curriculum. If you teach that, we're going to our school boards about not just that, but books that we find that are harmful for kids. But there's this should be the issue that unites everybody. Everybody should be united on wanting kids to achieve. And they have been wholesale failures. And I don't care if it's in Decatur or it could be right here in the suburbs. You've got plenty of school districts. West Chicago School District 33. And right now, about less than 15% of the kids read or do math at grade school. And that's a mostly Hispanic district. Where are those parents? Yeah. Where are those parents? That is not achievement. That is not a school. That is a daycare.
Yeah, it's a daycare and a work program for adults.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is.
It's a combination. It's a nasty thing to say, but that's the truth.
It is the truth. They can't defend this. And by the way, it didn't just happen. And it's not a COVID number, by the way. It's been this way for decades. Yeah, decades.
And the numbers we focused on were pre-COVID because we didn't want to get into the whole COVID discussion.
So all right, yeah. So these aren't even COVID numbers.
And Ginny, here's one more way to think about this. And again, let me stress, this is not Decatur. This is same thing in Rockford, same thing in Waukegan, right? Same thing in all these different schools across the state that not the suburbs of Chicago, not the North Shore. It's not there, but it's elsewhere.
It's in the suburbs of the western suburbs. Yeah. It's in DuPage County, though, I'll tell you.
And here's the point. You take Decatur. Decatur has 8,400 kids in the whole system, public school system. Well, if only 10% or whatever the numbers can read at grade level, that means over a generation of students, you're going to have about 8,000 kids come out of the school not ready for work, not ready for a career, not ready for college. What happens to Decatur? You got year after year of the workforce getting worse and worse and worse. You're spelling a disaster for Decatur. You're spelling a disaster for Waukegan, for Rockford. It's the future, and it doesn't bode well.
No, it doesn't. Well, I could talk all day with Ted Dabrowski, but we just hit a few of the really important topics. Thank you so much for the work you do at WirePoints. I encourage everybody, again, to sign up at wirepoints.org for their newsletter and listen to their podcasts and everything else. So, Ted, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for everything you do, Jeannie.
You bet.
Great partner.
Thank you.